Good morning, everybody, and very much well on behalf of the Institute of Directors, welcome to this webinar on Social Value and Wellbeing Act of 2004. I'm looking forward to a really good session. My name is Matthew Wallace. I am the chair for the Hampshire and Isle of Wight region of the Institute of Directors. I'm delighted, hopefully, to see you all here. Weather's lovely. Hopefully, we'll get use of your hour of your time, so you can get there outside. If you've managed to get some holiday, you can get out there in the sunshine. But I think you're going to find this webinar extremely interesting. What we're going to do then over the next just a brief hour or so is we're going to talk through the Social Value and Wellbeing Act and how it affects companies. The Procurement Act in 2023 was passed, and it becomes law in October 24. And this really does mean a levelling up of how business procurement is done across the UK. We're not going to be on the usual thing with government procurements has typically just been on price. It's going to be done on a host of other values, which are going to make things much more exciting, I think, much more open to especially SMEs, which is something close to my heart. I think I've advised a lot of smaller companies on how to grow their business, and it's going to be quite an exciting time, but make it much more available to everybody from that point of view. And if we think about the environment that is going on at the moment with the change of government and the probably things like the defence industry going huge at the moment, the amount of government business going around, I think, in the coming years is going to be an awful lot. So I think the timing of this is very pertinent. Let me introduce the two people who are going to help you through this. First of all, David Riley is going to do the majority presentation, is the CEO of SVRE and has been involved with government since 1996, advising on this type of thing. And so David is a very good authority on this subject, and will take you through and hopefully be able to inform you of what to do and how to progress in the future. He'll also be joined by Alice Carroll. Alice has been doing a lot of coaching as the Director for Culture and Training at SVRE, and will we be answering some of your questions as well if you have any at the end. A little bit of logistics. If you have questions, please enter them into the chat. Alice will be recording these, and we'll, if we have time at the end, we'll attempt to answer some of them. But we'll make sure we get back to you on all of them, so we can make sure you can follow up with the SVRE crew at a later date. But we have people noting down the questions, and we'll get back to you through emails on follow-ups, etc. So I'm looking forward to an interesting hour. I think you'll find it very, very useful and a lot of added value of your time. So let me now pass through with no ado, as we've got to get down to the nitty-gritty with David. David, I'll hand over to you now, so you can take everybody through the presentation.
That's great. Okay. Well, hello everybody, and thanks for listening to our 30-minute talk, and as Matthew said, with Q&As at the end. So thank you to the Institute of Directors for sponsoring, and the Federation of Small Businesses and Hampshire Chamber of Commerce for hosting. So as Matthew said, I'm David Riley, Chief Executive of Shaw. So we've only got 30 minutes to go through the slides, so I'm just going to get on with that. And as Matthew said, Alice is going to be collating the questions, because for me it's very important to keep on taking the sentiments from the SMEs that are out there, of whether they know nothing about it, something about it, or already embedding it in their businesses because of their contracts. So I am going straight to share a screen with you. Okay, so I'm hoping everybody can see this.
Yes, we can see it, David.
Okay, right, so let us go straight to the show then. Okay, so what is this change that is coming to the way we all do business? Okay, so does anybody remember these Bitcoins congestion charge, GDPR, ISO, and the dates they first appeared. GDPR, the latest 2016. Bitcoin's back in 2009, and congestion charge. And back in 1987, the ISOs first came out. But the point is, there was a time in the genesis of all these, back in 1986, people didn't know ISO. Back in 2014, 15, GDPR was set to raise its head, and the same with the congestion charge and the Bitcoins. And so it will be with social value, although it's been around for quite some time. It will be in 5 years' time as forgettable as GDPR, ISO. It will just be part of the business ecosystem. And what's driving this is this pretty innocuous document from the government, the Public Procurement Act. It had royal assent back in 2023 in October, and it is set to go live and become law in October this year. And as innocuous as it sounds, it is the process by which the government spends its £400 billion in annual public spending. Now that means the large private organizations who are bidding for contracts for the government and all their supply chains to complete the contract will be subject to the law of procurement in October, and we will get to that detail soon. But we have to go back 12 years to another act, which was the Public Services Social Value Act. Now this one is a lot more meatier. This was an act to require public authorities to explicitly evaluate social, economic, and environmental well-being in connection with the delivery of the public services contract. And let's do a quick diversion to the end of Brexit and what happened after that regarding global trading. We had the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, the TCA, post-Brexit, which recognizes the rights of all EU suppliers and EU-owned UK-based suppliers to bid for public work in the UK. And the dots there represent all the countries under that agreement. There's also another agreement called the World Trade Organization's Agreement on Government Procurement, the GPA. And this is an agreement between the 21 nations that have mutual and equal access to each other's government work. So for those amongst us who may have ideas of bidding outside the UK, these are all the countries that are under the agreement, have to assess your bid on an equal access and fair and full access to all their government's public procurement. It is a two-way street. So whilst you may be able to bid out there, what it also does, it allows all these countries, especially the EU, to bid for a bridge contract in Manchester. And the procurement officers, once the law passes, will have to fairly and equally evaluate their bid, which, being a two-way street, it allows you to bid for work around the world, but it also allows other overseas companies to fairly bid on the British government contracts. And the government obviously has some concern that with a lack of social value ready British businesses, businesses will be going abroad. There's 1.3 trillion pounds worth of overseas government procurement spending available to those who are social value ready and have more ambitious views of getting business from more than just the UK shores. So let's go back to where it all began. 1992, the United Nations created the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. This is like over 30 years ago. And the three pillars included social aspects, included economic aspects, and it included environmental aspects. And even back in 1982, the United Nations knew then that the biggest supplier of emissions is through supply chains. I mean, so supply chains features are really really high on the government's agenda for businesses to understand the concept of supply chains and the ability to work with them. Now, back in 1992, this is almost 35, 38 years ago, they wanted these to all be achieved by 2030, which is in 5 years' time. So let's have a quick look at supply chains and what that really is. A lot of businesses we go out to see say, well, we don't really have supply chains, or we have a few people we deal with, but there's a supply chain ecosystem in each and every business. In fact, business is an ecosystem of supply chains. And if you look at this first graphic, you have your business in the middle, and you have suppliers and you have clients. And the easiest way to do this is give a blank one of these diagrams to your financial department and get them to write in the company names of your biggest 5 suppliers and biggest 5 clients, and they are just the start of your supply chain. But then to look at it in greater detail from your client's point of view, you then become a supplier to your client. And what you need to know for the future is your client bidding for any private or public contracts? They may well be directly a supply chain a supplier to the likes of Balfour Beatty, the big construction or construction industries. But Balfour Beatty may well be, as the big construction companies do, have to bid for contracts from the government. The government has 100 billion for a certain project, and it flows through the private companies to the smaller private companies to you and to your suppliers. So be thinking about supply chains in that way. And the government will be asking Balfour Beatty and the big construction companies to show social value in their bids. And we are working with some construction companies that are being beaten by smaller constructors simply because they have a higher quality social value in their bids. So be thinking about supply chains as we go through this talk, and the importance of understanding them. So let's put a definition to what social value is. In its most simplest form, it is the extent to which your organization positively impacts its community by the 3 pillars that in the Sustainable Development Goals of social, economic, and environmental aspects. And well-being, in its most simplest form, is how your business demonstrates its commitment to the well-being of its workforce and of wider social and business community. So when we're talking about social value and well-being, it is those 2 descriptions that you should be thinking of. Now, you're all businessmen, so men and women, so you may well be using a Temple's mnemonic to track what's coming over the horizon. And when there's one change, it's bad enough. But when we look at social value and well-being, it is a political change. It's been 12 years in its making, 2 years in Parliament as a bill, and now it's finally becoming law. So there is a legal change which drives the new legal status of the 4,000 procurement officers that work for the government via local councils. It's a technological change because the world of PQQs will be phased out, and you will be inputting your ability to deliver your what's called core deliverables on a new database that the government is setting up. And of course, then we have the three pillars of social change, economic change, and environmental change. And the only thing that doesn't change, because it changes all the time, is media and AI. But in this case, it's AGI, and we are all at the moment starting to use an AGI technology from a supplier to track the well-being of your staff, and that is the future. So when so many things change, that's what's causing such a big change to the way we do business. But the social value model isn't new. All these companies and many more have had a form of social value embedded in them for years. But what is new is the impact on businesses who ignore it or embrace it. Okay, let's have a look at our UK workforce. And these are statistics from the Department of Trade. 17% work in the public sector, but 8,100 large businesses, that's businesses between 251 and 1,000 employees, make up the corporations. But as far as SMEs, let's have a look at their makeup. 36,900 medium-sized businesses between 51 and 250 employees. And as far as the smaller SMEs, there are 5.5 million small businesses in the UK of up to 50 employees. And as far as the workforce, 39% of the UK workforce is in large businesses. There's 13% in medium, but there's 47.6% of all the people that work in the UK, they work in small businesses. And if you add up the small and the medium, the SMEs, you get a whopping 60% of everybody working in England is working for the SMEs, which is why the government has put a third of its budget to startup, scale ups, and SMEs. They are the ones that will stand to benefit the most from the new legislation. It gives easier access to contracts. The complicated world of bidding for contracts has been simplified and made more transparent, because the government need SMEs to step forward and bid for contracts. And what's changed is the biggest factor in today's bids is what the government call MEET, the most economical advantageous tender. But what's changed by changing one simple word, the biggest factor in future bids will be they struck off the word economically, and they're looking for the most advantageous tender. And the most advantageous tender are tenders that includes social value. And the biggest difference in future bids will be nothing more than the quality of the social value embedded in your bid. And this is what it will do. Embedding social value in your business will help you retain your existing clients, ensuring that your work pipeline does not get turned off. If you're working for a private company, they will at some point turn around to you and say, we're bidding for a contract. We need to embed social value in the contract. In the social contract, it means that we have to look to our supply chains and see how they are doing. And when you turn around to your clients and say, we don't have a social value policy, they're either going to say, you need to get one, or we will not be able to use you as a one of our supply chain members under the contract. So ignoring social value will leave your business prey to both social value predators, both UK and of course globally. So these huge growth opportunities, what cost do they come to you? And all it will cost your business is to get a social value policy written into your business. And when we're talking about social value, you'll see 50% of it is about the well-being of your staff and your communities and anybody you employ under the contract. 25% will be scored on the emissions, the net zero, and 25% will be a split between your supply chains and your communities. So when you are thinking about a bid, no longer is it just price and quality. The makeup of a bid will be what's called your core deliverables, which is the business that you do, and they will look at the quality of what you do, but you won't be able to bid for a contract without the government or local authorities already knowing that the quality of your core deliverables is satisfactory. And price is not a term that they will be using anymore. The new term is whole life value, which is if they give you £1 million to tarmac a road, build a bridge, put in an IT system, they will also be scoring as 50% of social value the well-being of your employees and of those underneath the contract. So 30, if we take this evaluation as a bid for a contract where they weighted like Brighton do at 30%, Manchester's 25%, and most NHS bids are 50% social value. So this is a social value bid of 30%, where 15% or half is about well-being, 8% is about your social value and supply chains, 8% is about your emissions, your green status, but they also will look at innovation. When you're delivering your core deliverables, just doing the job is not enough. You will lose out to those who have decent quality core deliverables as you, but they are doing it in a more innovative way, or they have embraced any emerging tech, and they will also be looking at your company culture. And that is what bids after October need to start looking like to have any chance of winning any contracts. And the reason they've weighted social value is the state of our nation, and these are stats from the mental health statistics from the House of Commons Library back a few months ago, where 17% of adults experience a common mental disorder. 3.58 million adults have accessed the NHS mental health services back in 2023 when they took the last figures. 14% of its budget, that's £16 billion, the NHS spends on mental health services last year. And also the people we are going to recruit in the future, the children who will grow up and be your millennials coming into your business. Already 20% of them had a mental health condition in 2023, which is why back in 2021, the HM Treasury produced a very in-depth document called the Guidelines to Wellbeing in Business, because it is urging businesses, this is where 60% with employed in the UK through SMEs, to help them tackle the mental health crisis and ensure, the well-being of the English workforce. And I only say English because social values is a devolved matter. So Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland have their own social value type policies. But don't take our word for it. Don't take the government's word for it, why you should do it. 49% believe that companies who do not prioritize social issues do not care. That's from Harvard. 79% of investors say social values are vital in their investment decision making, from Price Waterhouse. 78% of senior executives agree strong social performance contributes to organizational value, and businesses with social purpose beyond just making money, beyond just doing business, outperform the market by a factor of 14. 40% higher levels of workforce retention. The price for businesses of recruiting and retaining staff is at a fault here. So 40%, 42% higher levels of workforce retention than their competitors when they have a social purpose driven, and 40% of millennials are ready to take a pay cut to work for an environmentally responsible company. 70% of them would not work for a company without a strong social purpose. And these are all reviews and studies over the last few years by Howard, Deloitte, Price Waterhouse, and even 89% of executives believe strong social purpose provides a competitive advantage. And I'll leave you with this slide here. This is an extract from the government green paper about transforming public procurement. And these are their words, not mine. We want to send a clear message that public sector procurement teams do not have to select the lowest price bid, and that in setting the procurement strategy, drafting the contract, and evaluating tenders, they can and should take a broad view of value for money that includes social value and well-being, which is why we say change is coming to the way we do business. It's time for you to act. Okay, I'm going to pass you back now to Matthew.
Hi there. Thank you very much, David. So I think
capture any questions?
Yeah, so I suspect there's quite a few questions, and thanks for that. I mean, I had one especially for you, actually, David. It's interesting you mentioned the question I have is this all across the UK? So is Scotland and Wales, Northern Ireland, etc., bound by the same act that's going forward?
No, no, because for instance, the Welsh, who have been doing it for about 4 years, we work for a lot of Welsh companies, and because it's more advanced there, we have situations where companies are being bumped off PSLs because they're being outbid by actually smaller, more agile companies who understand social value and write a better a more qualitative social value into their bids. But the Welsh describe it as the future generations, the future well-being of generations act, which is very, very poetic. The Scots is just the Scottish Procurement Act. So although they've got different names, the sentiment is the same. And in Scotland, actually, they will ask a bidder why they have not put social value into their contract, and pretty much tell them to go away and add some, basically. So it's devolved, but it's the same sentiment. I mean, the social value and the well-being is pretty much the same. So.
Okay, and the other thing, just fine for me for hand is just I was very interested in having done government business before in my career, that awful lot is driven by price. Is it actually now that price is actually going to be not the situation?
No, it's a real seismic change. They won't talk about price anymore. They talk about whole life value. So, if you win a contract for £1 million, that's the old price of the contract. But they won't see it as that. they're looking at what value for money they get from your million. You're going to build a bridge, that's great. So we can all build a bridge and it's £1 million. But those days are gone. Whilst building that bridge, they're looking for you to add social value whilst building that bridge, which is, if you're building the bridge in Hull, they will be, if the local authority in Hull gives you the contract, they'll be saying, that's great, build a bridge, but what are you going to do for our local community? How many people from what they describe underrepresented groups are you going to employ under the contract? And so they will not look at just the price of building the bridge. They will want the social value you're going to give back to them whilst building the bridge.
Okay. Well, finally,
So
is there, having been done a lot of work with SMEs, I'm sure this is sort of pertinent to people on the webinar. Is there any more improvement in how people, the smaller companies, get paid? Is there a limit to it? Because sometimes payment can take forever to come, and cash flow can be everything when you're
yeah, that's a great question. And I spent 30 years helping SMEs, and as we all know, cash flow is the killer. I've had some fabulous companies that just cannot make it. So one of the great things in the new act is that the government have stipulated basically a 60-day rule. I mean, yes, we'd all like to be paid on the 30th day, but let's settle for 60. So they will be paying their subcontractors on the 60th day. And what they're going to be saying, because there's a whole new set of KPIs within these bids, and it's saying to all its subcontractors and their subcontractors all the way down the line, they all pay on the 60th day. So the money all moves at the same time. And that will be a KPI that is signed off under the contract. And you're going to break a KPI if you pay on the 60th day or thereabouts. So I think for a lot of small businesses, it's good news, basically, to be able to manage your cash flow better when you know the money's coming in. So that's one of the great changes that's coming in.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Let me introduce Alice now. Alice has been watching for any questions coming in across the web. So I'll pass over to you, Alice.
Thank you, and thanks. We've got a great question come through here as well. This is from Nicola Shimwell, asking, in terms of having credentials, she's asking, having B Corp or being part of the Better Business Act, does this show that we've got social value? And if it doesn't, what does? How do we demonstrate it?
Okay, so when you're bidding for a contract, the government have very, or any local authority has very specific scorable metrics that they will score your activities against. So ESG, CSR, social impact, whatever you're doing is all a great help for people. Anything that anybody does, but as far as synthesizing that down through a contract, what the government need to do is to analyze what you're doing and score it. I mean, at the end of every of the 8 outcomes, they have scorable metrics, and they are how many people under the contract will you be hiring from underrepresented groups? How many people under the contract will you be training, giving apprenticeships to? How many green spaces? So what they want to do, what they're trying to do, is get all the billions of activity, great activity that goes into our communities, but they need to score it. They need to be able to stand up in government and say, in Hull there's 125 T1 apprenticeships and 50 from underrepresented groups, and then they've got the figures. What they're concerned about is they're not being able to record and have a sense of actually what everybody's doing out there. So So if you're bidding for a contract, you will be asked very specific questions. And of course, a lot of what you're already doing will score, but the government need to know that.
We've sort of explained it, haven't we? We're talking to people that doing great stuff, the B Corps, all of these things around social
Great.
impact, that they are
Yeah.
fantastic. So when we then look at how to demonstrate fully that is actually making something that the government can then talk about, it's that's the difference, isn't it?
Yeah. It's basically, quantifying everything that's been done out there by so many people. I mean, everybody is doing it. But I mean, if you're bidding for a contract, I mean, the contract will already have an idea of what it's asking you. And so as you know, when we do an audit in a company, like the one we did yesterday, I mean, they were scoring 7, 8, 9s all the time. So they already had wonderful social value, CSR credentials, but because they wanted to bid for contracts, we put that in a way that the procurers, we're told to the procurers in the language that the new social value procurers that have been trained by the government will want to hear. So it's just capturing people's data, so we all have a better idea of what the UK is doing as a whole, really.
So I guess essentially what we're saying is having all of these things are great. They are not enough to score within any bid situation. So social value and wellbeing policies tend to become the umbrella for all the great stuff you're doing around energy and sustainability, well-being. It just brings it all into one place, doesn't it?
Yeah,
That's
and they ask very specific questions, very, very, very specific questions. Lots of them. It's like a huge menu. You just choose the things that you're doing. If the things like when we're working for charities and they don't have many supply chains, they don't answer those questions. They don't need to, but because they're doing other things. So the 5.6 million SMEs, everybody moves a little. I mean, everybody employs two more people from underrepresented groups. That's over 1 million people suddenly being employed, and that's the data that the government would really like. So
as questions occur to you, please feel free to put them in the chat. One of the things that we often notice is there's an awful lot of information to absorb, and we get very common questions as we're chatting to people afterwards. So another thing people often want to know about is this mandatory minimums, if you like. There we go. It's about the mandatory stuff. So something that Claire Henley has just asked about. Is there a template?
There is a very people ask this. They say, look, can we just have the template? But okay, so the government has very, very clear scorable metrics. But if they gave them to you, you would then go out in maybe an artificial way and try and meet them. So that is why they don't really they don't talk about it. You can't get hold of them. They want you to do what your company, all your company can do, all your business can do to create social values, and then be scored against it. But one of the great changes in the Procurement Act, we've had so many SMEs saying, I'm not bothered, I can't be bothered bidding. It always goes to the big boys or the cheapest price, but that's gone. People have really got to understand that the government lost £7 billion when Carillion went bust and walked off with that money. So the transparency now, when you bid for a contract, if you don't get it, the government, it's not as if they'll go quiet. The government will absolutely, legally, the procurement officers need to write to you and basically tell you just what you need to do better to come back and bid again. I mean, you think about it, if everybody who bidded didn't bid again because they lost and it was a waste of time, then eventually, over the years, the big corporations would do the work and not the SMEs. So the government wants you to bid. It wants you to come back And so there will be this process where they will be saying social value was great. I mean, you know, but you were out social valued by another company, and we are obliged to. The law has gone from just considering social value at whatever percentage to explicitly evaluating social value. And when the law changes, each authority will be mandated to put a minimum of 10% into any contract bid. So you have to have a decent quality social value. But the problem with 10% is that's a mandatory minimum. And I have this, you know, you're having a barbecue and you say to your neighbors, hey, I'm having a barbecue. The mandatory minimum is a bottle of beer and a burger. And the day comes and one neighbor comes in and says, hey, I bought my bottle of beer and burger. And that's my mandatory minimum. You go, come in. That's a mandatory minimum. So come in. And then your next door neighbor says, well, I've got a crate of Kronenberg and a huge platter of meat, because they understand that if you're just going to go and say, we're going to do the mandatory minimum, you are always going to be outbid by a company that has better quality social value, which means that your bids have got to be 20% up. And as I said, remind you, if you're working for Brighton Council, you know, they have been applying heavy weighting since 2016, and the NHS work we do, I mean, you know, it can be up to 50%. So the mandatory minimum is, it basically shuts everybody out that doesn't have any social value.
There's a little addendum to this question, and then there's another great question from Vicky, which we'll come on to as well. And that is about, do these scorecards vary depending on the contract that you're working in, other than the mandatory minimums?
No. I mean, there are the bid evaluation metrics stay the same, but actually it's worse than that. The government has allowed procurement officials to add even more social value requirements to their bid contracts. Like, for instance, we're helping somebody write a bid, and they talked about the council wanted them to open an office in the town where the work's going to be and staff it with local people. So there are the bid evaluation metrics stay the same. Nobody can change them. I mean, they are there because what the government wants is a standardization. But they can add even more social value requirements as a mandatory addition to their contract, because in some authorities their problem is we have lots of community projects, we need funding, but in other authorities it will be, we've got a real problem with education and training and employment. And so this is where all the hard work, you know, from CSR, you say, yeah, but we're already involved with so many communities. They say, that's great, but what we need on this contract, we need employment. You know, we're giving you 8 billion here over 3 years. You've got to be employing local people and the people from what they loosely describe as underrepresented groups too. And in the scoring metrics, it will be how they ask for, how many people under the contract will you take from underrepresented groups in T1 training, apprenticeships, and then what percentage under the contract. So these are absolute scoring metrics that you will give a figure of 12 and 8%. So if they or how many green spaces, so they will specify under the contract, as all those people out there who bid for contracts. I mean, each and every one is a wonderful variation of a theme. So
it's like a plus, isn't it? So Vicky Fitzpatrick, coming from a really different, another angle. She's a sole trader who runs wellbeing workshops, coaching, women's leadership programs. So asking about best ways to approach businesses about this. Do they even know about these changes? That's an interesting one, isn't it?
No, I mean, look, I 25 years ago, I did an awful lot of work for the government when the hospitals turned into hospital trusts. But the the role of the government is to pass laws, and they put the laws into the public or private sector, and they will do with it what they will. So no, it's 5.6 million SMEs. The government just doesn't have the time or money to educate 5.6 million SMEs in what's coming down the line. They pass the law, and then the market does with it what it will, basically. And there will be those that will jump up, as you know, there's those that see the opportunities and risks and get on with it. Those that will think about it, and it's not mandatory. Nobody needs to do social value. I mean, it's it is the way of the future. It's almost a principle by which we all be living. But you don't need it to do it. But it just means you will not be able to access, the local authority government contracts, and even a smaller private company that is supplying a bigger private company to a government contract. They will all be asking, what about your social value policies? So no, and as you know, Alice, with your 20 years of doing well-being, I mean, it's front and center of social value. I mean, of course, the 25% is net zero, but my point is, we cannot just focus on making sure the planet has beautiful fresh air and as green as it needs to be, whilst the people walking upon it are on their knees because their well-being is falling through the floor, which is why the government weights 50% of every bid. They're going to say, what are you doing for the people? And then, of course, what are you doing for the planet? And how do you understand the supply chains? But only to help them, to tell them about social value and help them get ready, because the government, one of the things the government really dislikes is, under a contract, the supply chain breaks. There's the fourth subcontractor, even though it's past its due diligence, been able to do the job, collapses, and it leaves a gap in the chain, and the whole thing falls apart. So they want you to go down your supply chain and up your supply chain and just say, how are you doing? So
I think as well, Vicky, just in response, because obviously well-being is a really big part of what I do, and the answer is, businesses are, even if they're aware of social value as a concept now and hearing about it, the biggest surprise we find people have when we come in and start really working with them is they hadn't realized how much of that is about well-being, and how actually that contributes so much to the general engagement within the business anyway. So starting those questions, and actually one of the fantastic questions that are asked when we go through the audit, we look at the outcome, the 8 themes that are potentially in your social value policy. One of the really important questions is, have you asked your people to go away and talk about the things that are important to them, the work conditions they would like to see improve to help them thrive at work? So it's no longer a prescriptive idea of well-being, it's engagement right the way through. So it's a different type of conversation that we're having with people now. Tim has got some great questions here as well. He's asking for any sort of specific examples in how we can measure social impact. I know you talked about that a bit in the we talked about new people coming into employment, but outcomes as opposed to just the numbers, but sort of return on investment on outcomes that are social value led.
Yeah, this is I mean, there are some people that would say social impact, social value is just impossible to measure. It's an ethereal thing, but not for the people in the communities that good things are happening from them. But so the government are, the way the government are measuring what you do is through their scoring metrics. I mean, we have an audit process which literally goes through. We did one yesterday. It was almost a full day, and what it does is it asks, tell us what you're doing. Give me every example of what you're doing now, what you've done in the past, because the first question is about recovering from the impacts of COVID, and there's plenty of people still suffering from that. But they're asking, what is your existing and planned activities? So if you, so we audit or everything that you do in ESG, CSR, and social impact is auditable, and it brings it within a scoring metric. And a lot of companies who don't think they're doing that much are actually doing quite a lot. But if it's about taking these metrics and writing them into contract bids or creating a social value policy out of it, everything you do in the social impact just needs to be evaluated in the words and the way the government will attach a value to it. And there's hundreds of questions. So there's always a lot more that people are doing than they even realize, especially on the well-being of the staff. They're doing a few things, but actually when you ask them specific questions, I mean, the quality, of the answers driven by the quality of the questions. So if you're doing a lot of social impact work, then all we need to do is ask the right question for you to answer it, and then that becomes scoreable under the metrics. And as I said, that's what the government know. So many companies out there is doing so many great things, but they need to be able to record it, understand it, set a standard for it, really. So I guarantee you, if you're doing lots of social impact stuff, and that's what we do a lot for companies, we basically take their social impact work and we go, well, that scores well here, it scores well here, it falls under one of the 8 policy outcomes and all the sub criteria. So everything you do, I guarantee you, is definable, but in words and metrics that the government need, and you will need if you're going to write it into your social value policy, or take all the huge opportunities from the 400 billion that the government have got to place with with private companies.
Right, we've got another couple of questions here, and another one from Tim, which is about, and this is an interesting one, isn't it, about the business, the market driving itself. He's asking what's being or could be done to better link businesses with their local communities, charities, etc., to deliver that social impact / social value.
Turn yourself into a social value company. Write your social value policy. I mean, we help, we don't help, it's up to you. I mean, people can write their own social value policies, but if you write your social value policy, it's pretty much the way it writes the culture of your business and what your business is going to be for the next five or 10 years. So you have to go through the process of writing the policy to take everything the company is already doing. But I guarantee you, what happens when you do that is it generates an awful lot of new growth opportunities that you can only get as a social value company. And then the social value principles of your company will filter into your 3 or 5 year business development strategy, because I promise you, your business development strategy now, if it doesn't include social value, it needs to be rewritten. If you get social value ready, write your social value policy, and then you will realize you're going to be rewriting your business plan for the next 5 years, because you'll suddenly realize there's an awful lot of opportunities. Forget the risk, we can negate those, but it's the opportunities. I mean, I've been a businessman for 30 years. I mean, it's strong, robust growing businesses, what we all need, for Britain to, and also not be so the impact of the other 192 nations being able to bid for our contracts is a little scary for the government. So we want to keep our business in Britain as well as go out overseas and bid. So your business development strategy will change, because you will realize you've got so many great opportunities for growth from an area that you're not tapping into yet. So
what we're trying to do as well, I mean, they're sorry, Matthew, did you want to?
No. I said we've just got 5 minutes left, so perhaps one time for one quick more question.
Yeah.
Well,
One more
actually, can I
question.
just say, I think I saw a question flash up about 106. It was about
Yes, that's
Yeah,
my
this is
last.
the
meeting it,
final one. Yeah.
yeah, but basically, the government will have officials that will do drop-in spot checks to any local authority and say, "Show me the last 5 contracts." They don't need that many offices. It's a bit like going to Sainsbury's when you're clicking and walking out. Basically, you know, every now and again they spot check your trolley, and that's what it will be for the local council. They know at some point somebody's going to come from the government and say, "How's it going?" And on another note, I've got a whole list of emails that you can send to various government departments if you suspect foul play or you suspect mistreatment. So the government are serious about making this whole thing transparent. So it will be policed, and you will police it yourself too.
Okay.
Sorry, Matthew. Yeah.
David, Alice, thank you very much. It's obviously quite a complex topic. I think we're going to have a
Very
lot
much.
more things going on about it. If anybody has more questions, there'll be a follow-up at the end to all attendees on the webinar. So I'm sure David and Alice will be delighted to answer any further
Absolutely, yeah.
questions by email. From that
I mean,
issue.
go on the website, email any questions. Happy to answer any questions. And if you want to spend half a day, very happy to come out and talk to anybody. We're all about getting the message out there, basically. So feel free to do that online or in person if you're, you know, South Coastish.
Okay, so thank you for that. I'll just hand back just for a few minutes to David Gandon of Institute Directors to make a few comments. Thank you, David, for hosting this.
Listen, Matthew, thank you very much for all your energy, and to everybody out there, thanks for attending, and maybe talk soon.
And
David.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. Just to second what David R has just said so far. So thank you, David, for such an engaging presentation. Really interesting through this hour. And thanks to everyone for your questions as well. Very intriguing to listen to everything here. So I've just come off, so the IOD icon, there is a person behind the icon. That would be me. My name is David also. So I work in the IOD relationship team, so based in London, but working in conjunction with all the regions with my team. And so it's wonderful this morning just to hear how the conversation has gone and hearing the questions as well. Just a quick one for me to mention the upcoming events that are going on in Hampshire, Isle of Wight, and in South as well. There's another event going on today. In fact, we have a networking session that will be at Owsley Basingstoke this evening, in fact.
I'll be putting on my posh clothes to go and meet everybody tonight. If anybody would love to meet you, anybody coming down to the Andy Dealer in Basingstoke, we have a face-to-face networking, just have a few drinks and that. I think people find it extremely valuable. So please come along.
It sounds like it's going to be very good, Matthew, and I know a member of my team is also going to come along to say hello as well, so that would be great. It's a number of events that go on throughout the year and throughout the that are under this sort of bracket, the connect idea of things. So the networking events that go on. Not to mention too much about the neighbouring branches as well, to sort of take the spotlight off Hampshire, but we do have a number of different events that go on online and in person with IOD Sussex, Kent, London, and Surrey as well. And so please do have a little look at the IOD events pages online in case there's anything that would be of interest to you in terms of meeting people from just outside Hampshire too. We do have a number of other events within this branch too that would be of great interest. And then also our national events that go on soon. We have, for example, in early July, on the 9th of July, in fact, our next quarterly directors update, which is always a very interesting thing to join online as well, headed by our policy team, including Dr. Roger Barker. So I do encourage everyone to join if you may be free on that day. And if you look for any more information on membership, I do know that there are a number of individuals here who may not be members just yet. If you like what you've experienced today, please do to get in touch if you'd like to find out more about general membership. Myself and my team are always helpful on the other side of the line. The email address that will be added to the follow-up email will be memberrelations@iod.com. If you're looking for anything that's to do with general membership, including our special interest groups, any more about the other events that go on that you may wish to be included in, or you may wish to speak to Matthew for any questions you may have about any upcoming events that you may want to be involved in terms of organisation as well. I know that all regions and branches want to hear from members about new ideas that come their way. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. So thank you, David. Thank you, Alice. Thank you,
Okay.
David.
Okay, thanks very much.
If anybody wishes to come tonight, be delighted to see them. Go and register on the ID website for that as well, and hope to speak to you again. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you for your
Thank you very
time.
much.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Matthew
Cheers.
and David.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you.